Okay, back again. Let's do the parasympathetic pathways and the ganglia one more time just to practice. Different view, different time. We're going to look at 4 of them and 4 different targets, and you should be able to practice these and do them on your own. This is important. We will as we go on, what we cover will be based on you understanding these parasympathetic pathways. So when we talk about them, you don't get confused and you're trying to figure them out at the time. So these are the 4 targets. So there are 4 different pathways that we're looking at in this practice with the parasympathetic. And these are the lacrimal gland, top right of the screen, and then the eyeball, in particular the circular muscles, which I drew in green, of the iris. So those are 2 separate parasympathetic targets. And if you remember that the circular muscles in the iris are the constrictors, those are the muscle fibers that are innervated by the parasympathetic. The radial spoke-like dilators are innervated by the sympathetic, which we are not doing now. And then we have the rest of the major salivary glands, the sublingual, the submandibular, which are both innervated by the facial, will do, and then the parotid, which is innervated by parasympathetic fibers of cranial nerve number 9, Glossopharyngeal. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is how I like to practice these. You can do this if you like, or not if you want to do something else. But I like to make my central nervous system pretty easy. Cerebrum, spinal cord, cerebellum, that's good enough. So there's our CNS. You can draw one of those in about 3 seconds. And as I did before, there are numerous nuclei. I'm drawing them more or less in the cerebrum just for the ease of illustration, but realize that they're in the brain stem. So let's just call this one number 3, cranial nerve number 3. And as we drew before, this is the parasympathetic pathway, runs out into the orbit where there is a ciliary ganglion, and then it goes to the circular constrictor muscles. That's all there is to it. And this is the ciliary ganglion. It's within the orbit of the eye. And then the response. You have 2, dilate or constrict. Response is pupillary constriction. Done. That's all there is to it. And let's put a note in here to remember the neurotransmitters and receptors. I'll put that at the bottom. Basically, you learn one, you've learned them all. So note, remember neurotransmitters. I hope this is showing up, because I'm right at the bottom. Remember neurotransmitters and receptors. Okay, that was easy. Let's do cranial nerve 7. And there are several branches of all of these nerves, but let's make this one 7. Oops. That's 7. And this one has several branches, and let's just bring one out, and we will go out I'm drawing these sort of all vertically in order just for the sake of illustration. And then here is this one. It's going to do, I'm just going to draw it sort of as a couple of, oops, hang on a second. Wait. Oh, whew, good. I would have had to start over on that one. Let's have this guy going to the lacrimal gland, not back to the eyeball. Something like this. And the ganglion is the Pterygopalatine Ganglion, and you know where that's located in the skull and the head. So I'm going to, well, let's spell it out. Sometimes I will just write PP ganglion, but let's spell it out. Maybe spell it out. Pterygopalatine Ganglion. Okay. Now there are several branches of 7. Some of them we'll deal with now, some of them we'll deal with later. And here comes another branch. So right now we're staying with the pathway to the lacrimal gland, and this is the greater Petrosal nerve. And I'm abbreviating nerve conventionally with an N, period. So that's the greater Petrosal nerve. As I mentioned in class today, or Zoom today, you will not need to identify that on an illustration. It's buried in bone, the petrous portion of the temporal bone, but I would like you to know the name of the nerve that goes to the Pterygopalatine Ganglion. And then, as I mentioned also in class, this pathway, this postganglionic nerve, for a ways runs with the zygomatic nerve. So I'm just going to label this zygomatic nerve of V2. And this is sensory. And we will keep going over this, so you'll get the hang of it. But this is, remember the dermatomes of the face. We'll do that again. But all I'm saying is that for a little ways, this postganglionic fiber of 7 going to the lacrimal gland runs for a short distance. It combines with the zygomatic nerve of V2. Later on, it combines with the lacrimal nerve. If I can write up here in the corner, I'm really getting squished. But this is the LAC hyphen lacrimal nerve. And this is of V1. And it is sensory also. Okay? Don't worry about the red and the green too much right now, as we will be coming back to it multiple times. But the idea is that these nerve pathways merge together, they stay separate nerve fibers, and then they split off and go different directions for a ways. Okay. So, the response of the lacrimal nerve would be increase in lacrimal secretions, increased tears. lacrimal fluid. That's the response. So there's 2 of the 4. Then let's do the other part of the facial nerve. So let's go to the salivary glands. And the ganglion is the submandibular ganglion. This branch of the facial nerve is called the Chordae Tympani. So for right now, if you simply associate the Chordae Tympani as a branch of 7, you're okay. It's not going to be the Chordae Tympani that goes to the submandibular ganglion, but it's the branch up here that comes off there. We'll call that the Chordae Tympani. Later on, this pathway will run with the sublingual nerve, but we'll come back to that. Right now, just focus on the parasympathetic pathways and associating the greater petrosal nerve, supplying the Pterygopalatine Ganglion, and the Chordae Tympani headed ultimately to the submandibular ganglion for the sublingual and the submandibular salivary glands. And the response again would be increased salivation. So that's it for 2 of these 3 cranial nerves that carry parasympathetic fibers. So the oculomotor went to smooth muscle motor of the eye. And 7, parasympathetic, is going to the lacrimal gland via the Pterygopalatine ganglion, and to the sublingual and submandibular salivary glands via the submandibular ganglion. The last cranial nerve is 9. Glossopharyngeal. That's unreadable. Jeez. Nine. Okay. And it leaves and goes down to the otic ganglion. I switched colors to green for no particular reason other than I forgot to switch back to black. So this is the otic. It's right by the ear. So this branch, there are other branches that come off of number 9, but this branch is the lesser petrosal nerve. And the otic ganglion is near the tympanum. And that's all within the infratemporal fossa again. So again, crowded area. And if you, that's it. So practice this. Make associations. The lesser petrosal nerve, for example, associated with cranial nerve 9 going to the otic ganglion. Make sure you get the lesser petrosal nerve as the preganglionic. Just like the Chordae Tympani is going to be part of the preganglionic pathway. The greater petrosal is part of the preganglionic. So don't put the petrosal nerve after the ganglion or the lesser petrosal nerve after the ganglion. So that's enough of that. Practice that until you can do that when you wake up in the morning without looking at anything else. Those 4 pathways. Okay. See you later. Bye.